Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guest today is Ramon Pinero, General Manager at BlackBerry Ad Hoc, where he heads up product and services. Ramon, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you on to talk about how agencies prepare for continuity of operations. Of course, like a really big topic for any agency, whatever their mission is. There's so many different scenarios that they might have to plan for. And, over the last decade, we've seen a lot of changes in technology that agencies use. We've also seen some big changes, to say the least, in how agencies carry out their work. The big change, obviously, being the shift to remote work during COVID. Now, of course, agencies are coming back, but I think it's still fair to say that agency workforces are pretty dispersed. So, Ramon, with all that in mind, I know you're an expert here. I'd love to get your perspective on what you're observing as far as how agencies are preparing for the inevitable emergency or contingency that might happen.
Thank you, Justin. And I mean, you're absolutely right. It's an astute observation, and I think that first, that government agencies are just increasingly recognizing that the emergency preparedness space is multidimensional, and it's a challenge for them because it requires these kind of newer integrated strategies that are a lot different from when they were years ago. And that overall landscape, if you will, of operational continuity has shifted beyond like traditional disaster response to a more holistic and adaptive approach.
Yeah, tease that out for me a little bit here. What was the traditional approach, and how is it now a little bit more holistic and adaptive, as you say?
So what we've seen in, let's say, emergency services, where there was a checklist as a response to a particular local emergency, and that checklist would be followed, if you will. Now, the folks executing on that checklist were very good in the first responder community, and they had some levels of technologies to interoperate and collaborate during these different events and a crisis, if you will. But I think that in modern times, there are more multidimensional concerns because the threat landscape has evolved. It's now, let's say you had mentioned working from home, it now concerns like cybersecurity, right? And cybersecurity in somebody's home, not just on the domain, if you will. The pandemic and other health emergencies, these extreme weather events that you're seeing more frequently. I just was seeing in the news about wildfire in New York, right? And that's unheard of, right? Wildfires are typically a West Coast thing. You have the potential for like critical infrastructure disruptions on a scale that we haven't seen, given, let's say, even the Baltimore bridge collapse, and just ongoing civil unrest and active kind of threat scenarios around uh, uh, terrorism, be it international terrorism or domestic terrorism. So all of that together makes it a far more complex environment in which to plan for, and requires tools and the planning and the collaboration for kind of an interconnected response.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of the technologies that agencies are now using, or perhaps they want to use to better prepare for that whole range of scenarios and risks that you just laid out for us. I mean, what are you hearing from the agencies that you work with, or that you're tracking, as far as how those technology requirements might have changed over the last few years?
Yeah, so here's what I'm hearing and seeing. So I'm hearing that kind of real-time understanding of that threat landscape is a need, right? And no kidding, in an operations center, they would have like the news on, right? Kind of following news updates of a situation as it unfolds. But I think that the technology, the trends that we're seeing are in line with those evolving needs. So you would see like our platform, for example, provides interoperable communications, and that's the ability to bridge gaps between, let's say, a federal, state, and local response, right, for a particular incident. like there in Washington, D.C., huge military community. Obviously, think about the air disaster that happened quite recently. That was multi-agency, right? So that happened at the local level, let's say with fire, happened at the state level, right? Or within the district, and also obviously at the federal level as well, right? And so how do you get information and intelligence sharing to enhance the overall response on a secure platform? That's something that we can provide as well because our customers are asking for that. They also want secure and scalable communication networks, right? So how do I secure voice? How do I secure messaging, right? Some agencies have just been in the news, right, using WhatsApp, kind of consumer grade messaging. How do you get messaging that is approved? You have privileged conversations, and you have all the controls, if you will, to administer who can talk to who, retract conversations, and the like. And how do you provide secure and encrypted voice as well, and assemble everybody onto, let's say, a disaster control call, right? Where people need to collaborate in real time and hear the readout and then get their call to action and then move out. We also hear about like mobile and cloud-based solutions as well, intermixing, if you will, or being interconnected with on-prem systems. So in a sense, it's kind of a hybrid where you would have some solutions in the cloud, some solutions on-prem, and how do they communicate securely and ensure that the right people have the right information at the right time. You would also have what people are taking from their consumer life, if you will, where on your phone, it's going to let you know you should leave for the dentist because there's a lot of traffic. How do I incorporate those insights using AI or machine learning? Because you know where my people are, let's say in a crisis management system like ours, you know where your assets are you're trying to protect, and you know where the incident is. So how do you let AI, if you will, identify the intersection between what you're trying to protect and the people who need to respond to a particular incident? So I see that like you have these tent poles, if you will, around technology, around interoperable communication and interoperability overall using APIs to connect systems together. You have secure and scalable communication networks. And then you have cutting edge technologies to kind of bring them all together and to provide some kind of ongoing monitoring to, let's say, reduce your time to knowing that something's wrong, right? Thereby reducing your mean time to recovery or even avoiding that catastrophe in the first place.
Fantastic perspectives there, and I really like the way you kind of bracketed it out. And I'd love to start with interoperable communications. Interoperability is something we hear a lot about when it comes to agencies working with each other within the federal government. And obviously, as you laid out, state, local, federal, international partners, I think
That's
for a
right.
lot of agencies are in there too. What are some of the challenges today around interoperability, and how are agencies looking to solve them?
Those agencies first face the challenge of security, right? How do you share information within and across your agencies in a secure manner? How do you have seamless public to private sector communication with, in a sense, kind of off-the-shelf technologies that are easy to implement, easy to administer, and kind of drive adoption within those agencies? Nobody uses it. It's not going to work, right? So it's got to be easy to live with as well. How do you provide regional or multi-dictional coordination using those technologies? You mentioned international, kind of cross-border, let's say that in the US in particular, in the northern border, you have agencies on the Canadian side and on the US side that have to communicate and collaborate and interoperate securely for intelligence sharing for a ton of different reasons. Illicit drug trades, human trafficking, right? Surveillance, if you will, counterterrorism. And you can do that in a couple of ways. One, it's not just the technology, but it's also the data residency and data sovereignty. So like every country has their own instance and systems. Fantastic. That means that their people, their threat intelligence, their response plans are all embedded in this platform, and that's the app. Then they can connect, if you will, to those cross-border agencies that they need to communicate and collaborate with. That makes it interoperable, and that's seamless without having to know and maintain, if you will, the roster of people that are on call on the other side of the fence, right? So it's nobody's managing who's on shift, a special weapons response team or a canine team or anything like that, because they're all managed, right, within their own jurisdictions. But when you need to activate a response plan, then those systems are already interconnected. Initiate response plan A, that is a joint response between both cross-border agencies, and let the system do its thing. It can kind of trickle down, if you will, the message, relay that call to action, identify who are the right people that need to respond, and then dispatch them. So that's what we see as kind of a need and a scenario, if you will, playing out for collaboration and interoperability.
It's a great example, and I think we can also cover some of the cybersecurity challenges that you touched on, some of the requirements that agencies are having for these consumer-grade type technologies. But first, we're going to take a short break here. Again, my guest today is Ramon Pinero, General Manager at BlackBerry AtHoc. I'm Justin Doubleday on the discussion, Business Continuity in an Era of Disruption, Maintaining Operations with BlackBerry AtHoc, sponsored by BlackBerry on Federal News Network. Welcome back to Business Continuity in an Era of Disruption, Maintaining Operations with BlackBerry AtHoc, sponsored by BlackBerry on Federal News Network. Again, my guest today is Ramon Pinero, General Manager at BlackBerry AtHoc, where he heads up products and services. I'm Justin Doubleday. And Ramon, before the break, obviously we were talking about interoperability, between agencies at different levels, between different governments. Cybersecurity is just this ever increasing area of concern for agencies. Is my data going to be safe? Is my system going to be safe and resilient kind of through different scenarios, through different potential attacks? When we're talking about continuity planning and communications, how are you seeing agencies approach this issue of cybersecurity? Is it evolving to keep up with some of the current threats?
It's a great question because it used to only belong to the CISO, if you will, within the organization. But given the ongoing risks and the ever-growing attack vectors for cyber upon the, let's say, employee base, if you will, we see that becoming part of the overall business continuity and emergency planning spectrum. So it's like this full spectrum of threats, right? That now includes cyber. So one example that comes to mind is the Salt Typhoon example, where there was a compromise in messaging communication, right? Which really speaks to the need for a sanctioned, highly secure way in which to communicate via messaging and to communicate via voice. That allows organizations to kind of deploy a solution on-prem or in the cloud, if you will, that they manage, where they ensure that the right people are connected to, first of all, identity is verified, so you know you're talking to the right person, you're exchanging messages with the right person. Also, that those conversations are managed and audited from a compliance standpoint. So that means that I can create groups, administer who can be in groups, who can talk to who, all of this happening over the most secure way in which to communicate via voice or messaging. Most importantly, with that particular solution around creating a secure communications network is the metadata. So similar to, let's say, any of the TV murder shows that you watch where they track and find the guy because his cell phone's pinging a tower, if you will, that's part of the metadata, right, on your phone. So in solutions like ours, we're able to secure that metadata so that only the organization has access to it, right? And that metadata, if compromised, if it falls into the wrong hands, right, could pinpoint the identification or identify people. And so it's important that it's not only secured, encrypted, but the access is there and the control is there to organizations who need it. And that's very important. So I think that the robust encryption, building your own easy to use communication network, and ultimately providing an alternative that's sanctioned and secure to, let's say, a WhatsApp or a Signal is key to combating those ongoing cyber threats having to do with, in this case, kind of voice messaging and eavesdropping by our adversaries.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fascinating point. It wasn't that long ago, I think, that we saw on your metadata point, a kind of covert U.S. military base was exposed because military service members were using Strava,
Mm.
right? And that was getting uploaded to essentially a public data repository. But when you're talking about how agencies set requirements around these things, I think there's been a lot of conversations about how like FedRAMP, the cloud authorization process, can be improved. There's a big push from the CISO community to embrace kind of zero trust networking architectures. Do you see the processes inside government keeping up with some of the threats, but also the requirements for these innovative technologies that you've talked about here?
Well, I do think, I mean, there's some wonderful people kind of behind the curtains in all of the agencies that you had mentioned, implementing and thinking forward around ZTNA, the zero trust piece, the compliance piece, and ensuring that we can achieve data protection, data sovereignty, data residency, if you will. And I think that the the process, while arduous, right? At times, it's a lot of documentation, is important because it really allows vendors like us to show and prove, right, the level of security that we provide. And I think that it builds confidence within the community, right, to rely on solutions like ours because we've gone through this very high bar. And one that we went through recently is going through FedRAMP and achieving FedRAMP High. Now, we've been FedRAMP Moderate on the ad hoc platform since 2017. We were the first in our space to do it. Now we're the first in our space to go to High. And we couldn't be more proud. It wasn't easy. It takes a tremendous investment in capital, in people, right? And ensuring that our tools, our process, our technologies are all adherent and even exceed that FedRAMP High / impact level 4 types of requirements. And then what we're so proud to do is go and walk through our documentation package, demonstrate what we're able to deploy and how we secure it to any of those agencies. And if you look, let's say on the FedRAMP marketplace, you'll see well over 20 different ATOs that we've achieved and for customers we're privileged to serve. But that ongoing investment isn't limited to one particular product within BlackBerry. Certainly our SecuSUITE products, along with UEM, all represent the ongoing investment that we have in this space for certifications, be it FedRAMP or NATO or BSI or any other country's very strict, think of common criteria, IT security requirements. So that ongoing investment isn't trivial, but again, it's a way for us to demonstrate to the market and to our customers to earn their business every day that we're serious about security and we're serious about their security and helping them to achieve their mission objectives.
Okay, and you've touched on this throughout our conversation, but kind of turning to the requirements that agencies have for new features, new
Mm,
capabilities.
yeah,
You've touched on how some of the consumer grade technologies that are out there kind of drive this conversation because folks have the ability
yeah,
to have so much capability on their mobile phone
that's right.
today. But where do you see that going? What are some of the emerging capabilities and technologies that will disrupt continuity of operations and contingency planning from a communications and IT perspective?
Well, I think a lot of organizations right now are going through a transformation and working to be more efficient, if you will. That could mean that they're working with smaller teams. And so, how do you increase the productivity while the organization is going through this transformation? And we think that machine learning and artificial intelligence can be a huge productivity boost under these situations. So you can apply AI to this space and to our platform specifically by, faster warnings and alerts and predicting problems before they happen and kind of quickly sorting out what's important. Also automated like message creation, right? So under each one of those is a particular function. So continuous monitoring for different data sources that we're ingesting into the platform and having kind of real-time early warnings of what's happening back to that intersection of the threats that are coming in and the people you're trying to protect. Um, Quickly sorting out what's important. So if you see a situation that's unfolding, let's say it's a hurricane in Florida, where you have a headquarters building there. Well, there's a few things happening. You got wind, you have an evacuation order that's occurring, you have flooding that may be occurring, maybe people signaling back to the command center that they're under duress or that they need help. Or, how do you let AI help to sort and triage those priorities that are all happening at the same time so that you can direct your resources for a more effective response overall? How do you, with minimal input, generate, let's say, emergency notifications about that flood? So instead of me typing out, there's a flood, avoid the area, evacuate to higher ground, and kind of trying to think of what to say under those circumstances. Uh, let AI, who already understands the threat, because we're ingesting it into the platform, who already understands who's impacted by the flood, right? And already understands what the contingency plan is. What's the call to action? What should they do? Let it generate that message, right? So with minimal operator input, generate that message, you approve it, it gets disseminated as quickly as possible while you're also monitoring and doing the other parts of your incident response plan for that hurricane, right? Could be any natural disaster, could be a terrorist incident. It's the same. Reduce the mean time to knowing something's happening, sorting out what's important from the noise, so decreasing the signal to noise ratio, and then letting people know and being able to communicate and alert and collaborate with agencies that are responding as quickly as possible and securely as possible.
Okay, well, I feel like we could continue this conversation for a while, but unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. So, again, I'd like to thank my guest, Ramon Pinero, the general manager at BlackBerry Ad Hoc. Ramon, thanks again.
Thanks so much, Justin. We appreciate it.
Great to have you on. And again, I'm Justin Doubleday. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search BlackBerry.